Hey, my dear and awesome viewers, you truly are awesome because thanks to you, your subscriptions, likes, and comments, I understand that you are interested in this channel and the content I am creating for you. Considering that I'm one-person team handling scripting, shooting, and editing my videos, your engagement inspires me to create higher quality and more interesting content. In my previous videos, we talked about phonics and learned to correctly pronounce various diphthongs, blends, and digraphs in English language. Yes, it might have been a bit dull because phonics can be a bit boring, but notice that after mastering proper pronunciation patterns that helps you read English texts, understanding of new material becomes much easier. Guys, today we'll start discussing English grammar. When students and learners hear the word grammar, the first thing that comes to their minds is tenses in English, and everyone seems to panic trying to memorize all the rules for each tense and the entire table of irregular verbs. But is it really that difficult? Is that where we should start? Let's break it down. First of all, I want to note that English grammar is considered not that difficult as it might appear. The first challenge everyone encounters is the difference in thinking patterns, which is distinct from their native language. As language is a system of sounds reflecting the flow of thoughts. Expressing thoughts and their sequence directly affects the grammatical structure. For example, it's clearly visible in the endings of nouns, verbs, etc. in Ukrainian language, which is my native language, such as він прийшов, вона прийшла, вони прийшли. This kind of thinking also allows us to juggle words in a sentence by changing their positions. For example, вона їла грушу, їла вона грушу, грушу їла вона. In English, juggling words in a sentence is not possible because the thinking pattern here is more direct and less formal in expression. This thinking style demands a direct word order in a sentence and omits more personal endings. So instead of прийшов, прийшла, прийшли, we have go and goes. Like in sentences, he goes, she goes, it goes. Also, in English, we can't rearrange words in a sentence, saying a pear she ate she a pear, a she pear ate, thinking that we'd be understood by another person. We should follow a straight word order and say she ate a pear. So the first thing to understand is that the native speakers of the language you are learning have slightly different thinking patterns that reflect in language. And that's why sometimes it seems that in other countries people express their thoughts somewhat differently. People are people, but the software in their brains is a bit different. For example, Chinese and German are excellent examples of different thinking patterns and how they are reflected through linguistic features. In Chinese, for instance, there are no gender distinctions for nouns and verbs, and the word ta, for example, means he, she, and it, although the characters in writing differ. Hence, sentences like he its, she its, it its, all sound the same, like ta chi, ta chi, ta chi, indicating less gender specificity in thinking. On the other hand, the German language has many articles for nouns like der, die, das, dem, den, and so on, indicating different cases and genders. For example, der Vater, des Vaters, dem Vater, den Vater. This shows a more structured, linear thinking type where belonging to specific case and genders holds a great importance. These language differences reflect various ways of perceiving the world and expressing thoughts, where each language reflects a unique thinking pattern and perception of information through linguistic structures and characteristics. So firstly, let's reinforce what needs to be understood. Another language primarily means different thinking patterns, which are reflected in the language. This is the primary obstacle in learning English when students try to translate phrases or sentences, sometimes literally from their native language into English word by word. The most effective method to understand this thinking pattern will be by memorizing words or phrases in simple sentences. For example, not just pear, but it's a pear. Not just run, but I run. Not just run out, but we ran out of sugar. Eventually, your brain will construct simple English sentences faster and more easily. Now, please pay attention to this word. Is it a noun or a verb in English? Jump can be both a noun, or jump, and a verb, to jump. What about this word? Again, jumping can be both a noun in sentence I like jumping and a verb in sentence he is jumping. And this tells us about the second thing we need to understand, that in English language certain words can be different parts of speech at the same time, and their meaning in a sentence can depend on the context, because English is often considered a contextual language due to the importance of context in understanding meanings. Overcoming this barrier in learning English will be facilitated by simply understanding what nouns, verbs, pronouns, and so on exactly mean in English, as although these concepts might be identical to the corresponding concepts in your native language, their usage in a sentence can be different, particularly their sequence. The third barrier, which everyone considers the most challenging, though in reality it's the easiest to learn and use, is the tenses in English language. To understand them, you need first and foremost to grasp three basic types of sentences. Those are declarative, negative, and interrogative. For instance, I am a boy. I am not a boy. Am I a boy? Most learners get lost in the tenses of English, especially in the past forms of verbs, not realizing that using those forms is necessary only in declarative sentences in the past tense and all types of perfect tense sentences. That is, 3 types of sentences multiplied by 12 tenses gives us 36 sentences. Yet, we only use them in 10. And if we narrow it down to casual conversation, we can manage without perfect tenses, indicating that these verb forms are used only in 1 out of 27 sentences. Perfect tense and verb forms are really important, but we'll delve into these aspects closer towards the end of the grammar course. So, let's talk briefly about how and from what we'll start and what we'll end with. Therefore, we'll start by understanding the basic aspects of English grammar and move on to more complex topics. That includes all parts of speech in English language and how to use them correctly, starting with what a noun, verb, pronoun, preposition, etc. are. Then we'll focus more on discussing simple sentences, basic tenses in English, modal verbs, etc. Then we'll proceed to more complex grammar aspects like gerunds, idioms, conditional sentences, passive voice, and conclude with more complex structures and hacks that will help you in writing or simple conversation. Guys, please don't forget about the barriers mentioned today in the video and the advices on overcoming them. And remember, consistency beats talent, which means that regular practice, even if it feels slow and challenging, ultimately leads to greater proficiency and success in learning English. See you soon and wish you luck.